Everyone is Addicted is a judgment-free space for real conversations about addiction. It's a show about breaking the stigma and building empathy. Everyone is Addicted, Mondays at 11 p.m.
What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Outloud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 119. Today, we got an awesome guest. He has been on some stuff that I've done before with Wrestling All Day, Every Day, wrestling podcast. But today, he's here to talk about something a little bit different, a little bit off of the topic of wrestling. It includes wrestling a little bit. But we got war-driven Johnny Devine. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How you doing, man?
Brother, man, I am doing great. It's been a great day. I did some gardening, watched some videos on gardening, so learning that, and just having my cup filled continuously throughout my day. It has been awesome.
Definitely sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Gardening, huh? In that heat, in this heat.
Look, man. Look, man. The plants never stop growing, but they need water. And so go outside, and I saw something that just didn't look right to me, and I was like, let's take care of that. And then I started seeing other things that didn't look right to me. I was like, we're just gonna go throughout all the plants and make sure everything is copacetic.
Definitely, I got you. Understand that.
Yeah, and it's good for your mental health, and you get out in the sun. And I mean, dude, I sweat more in that time than I have in a very long time, just because I eat. So yeah. I mean, it was fun. It was great. And then I came inside, and I was like, I'm just going to sit my happy ass inside for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, down here in Georgia, it's like 100 degrees. I think yesterday it broke a record that was set in like 1800 and something. So it's a heat wave down here where I'm at. So to even go outside, it's like you walk outside and it's almost like somebody throws a bucket of water at you.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, no, it's 92 here. I live about an hour outside of Baltimore, and it is just scorching hot. It's been that way this whole summer. It's been like intense heat and rain.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. No, nothing, no in between, no lulls in the weather. It's just been intense heat and rain.
Yeah.
Crazy. But anyways, John, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah. So my name's John. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, Ric Flair country. If you're a wrestling fan, definitely. I grew up there, military family. My family's military lineage dates all the way back to the American Revolution. So we have a pretty significant military history in my family. So I grew up military family, inner city kid, Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not super big city, but it's a city. It's pretty big. It's not like Atlanta or anything big like that, but it's a decent sized city. And, I had a lot of good times growing up there. Joined the service after 9/11, pretty much just like you did, Sean. And, spent pretty much most of my adult life in the Army, and, saw some things, saw some cool things, saw some bad things, wound up medically retiring out of the Army and becoming a professional wrestler after that. And that's where I'm at now. I'm a professional wrestler, retired Army veteran. So just living life.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you for your service, and also
a
second thank you for entertaining us. what you do, you put your body on the line for, for the fans, for their entertainment. So I want to take a moment and say thank you, man. I'm grateful for that.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, man. In one of the other episodes, or in the wrestling podcast we did, we talked pretty, at length about growing up in Charlotte, about how you were, grew up in Flair country, and that's wild. How, let's recap that a little bit, talk about that, because maybe some of the people didn't watch that and they watch this. How, growing up in a military family and watching wrestling, that's kind of taboo now, but it wasn't back then, was it?
No, it was for me. For my family, it went hand in hand. Honestly, my grandfather was in the army. He did tours in Korea and Vietnam, or he did tours in Korea. Got out for a couple years. Vietnam kicked off. He went back in. Did 2 tours in Nam. Became a drill sergeant during Nam at Fort Benning. Went back for the third tour. Wound up getting wounded pretty badly in that third tour, and came home. And just like me, when I came home from overseas as well, I got out, and somebody was like, "Hey, I think you could become a wrestler. Have you ever thought about training?" So me and Grandpa, wrestling and the army go hand in hand in our family. Like it's kind of walked that same line since the mid '70s.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned that your family roots back and has military roots all the way to the Revolutionary War. Can you trace it to like the Civil War as well?
Yeah, so actually, there is a post. If at some point, if you could find my Johnny Faith Facebook page,
Hmm.
you got to scroll back probably a couple months. But I have a post where it's faith, family throughout the years or something like that. It was something I did, and I went and found in college. When I was in college, I took a genealogy class, so I had access to ancestry.com. So I spent hours trying to find stuff about my family for this genealogy project. And that's where I found out that my family dated all the way back to the American Revolution, running supplies for the colonials. And then in the Civil War, they fought for the Union. So it was, there's pictures and stuff. So they're out there on my Johnny Faith page. But yeah, my family fought for the Union during the Civil War, and ran supplies, and did a bunch of stuff for Massachusetts.
Wow, that is wild.
Yep.
Uh, One of the things that I found out when I was in the army. So what were you were 11 Bravo, right?
12 Bravo.
Well, Bravo. Okay. So Cav Scouts, they wear the Stetson on Fridays, for their final formation or throughout the day. And I found out that if you can trace and like accurately identify your family that was in the American Civil War in as a Cav Scout, you can wear the gray Stetson,
Oh,
which
wow.
identifies you as lineage, like a
Yeah,
lineage of blood going all the way back. I've never seen that before, but that is an actual regulation.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, an AR-670-1.
And now it's kind of, I mean, I guess now with ancestry.com, I think it would make it a little easier. But even back then, the only thing that I found that my family had participated in the Civil War was it was a receipt for a musket that he had bought.
Wow.
And that's where I kind of went down in a rabbit hole after that, because I found this receipt of a musket that he bought, just outside of New York City. And I was like, he bought the musket because his other musket was messed up in battle, so he had to purchase his own.
Wow. That
Yeah.
that is wild. That's wild. What else did you find about your heritage? I mean, obviously it had to continue somewhere, right? Like, did you find out what nationality you are, or like where your
Irish.
heritage comes from?
Yeah,
Irish?
Irish. I don't know the exact town in Ireland where my family came from. Around 17, it was like the 1750s. They
Yeah.
came to the United States from Ireland. I have the town name. Apparently, there's still some Devines that live in that town.
Wow.
So my wife, it's her dream trip to take a trip to Ireland. So I always told her, if we go, let's just make a pit stop in that town and see some old family.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I did a 23andMe in December for like a Christmas present, and
Hmm.
I was able to trace my roots back to Ireland, England, Scandinavia, which is crazy because like I believe in the Norse gods, and something kind of called me. So it was like,
Well, you kind of got something growing here that would help out with that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And so it was like really cool to to like confirm that what I believe in actually holds true to my heritage. Um, and also I was like Ireland and England, it kind of makes sense, but then it's like the Irish were enslaved to the British
Hmm.
in that time, so it makes a lot of sense. And my dad always, had our coat of arms in the house when I was growing up, and I never really paid attention to it. And then I was able to see like the coat of arms, my family's coat of arms. So it was
Yeah.
pretty wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw my family's coat of arms was when my grandfather died in like '06, and we were cleaning out his place, and I found it, and it's like this huge, like 3 feet by 5 feet thing, and I'd never seen our coat of arms before, and it was cool to see. So that's where the interest started with trying to figure out where I came from.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna dive into your story. When did you join the army, and where did you go to basic and AIT at?
So it's a basic at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Fort Lost in the Woods. Did basic AIT there, OSET, 16 weeks, 12 Bravo. So 9 weeks, pretty much Army. And then, another, 5 or 6 weeks learning demolitions and building bridges and things like that. And from there, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, 1st Engineer Battalion. And they had just gotten back from Iraq, and they had just gotten the crap kicked out of them over there. And so I was brand new Joe coming into a unit that literally just came back from a shitty deployment. And, being the new guy, I got fucked with
Yeah,
so much, man, because they just got destroyed, man. And I knew what I was getting myself into. You know what I mean? I knew that, the war was just kicking off like completely. And they had just came home. They gotten slaughtered pretty much. They got beat down, and reality set in
yeah,
real quick. Those first 2 weeks I was in that unit because we were already scheduled to go back in 8 months.
yeah.
So you know I don't know how far you want me to go. I can keep going. But that was the beginning of my Army career. I joined, I pretty much deployed right out the gate. All right. I got into a unit that had just gotten slaughtered, and we were rotated to head right back, 8 months later.
Yep, I mean, that's kind of how it was for me. And I can agree when you're the new man, when you're the new kid on the block in the army, you get fucked with
Yeah.
consistently, right? And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of glad that it was like that because I got tough skin, right? Like, and I learned not to take it personal, that it was business, and that I had to grow up in a certain kind of way, or else some bad shit was gonna happen.
Yeah. And I mean, thankfully I was kind of prepared for it, because my family, and I kind of knew. My mother gave me really thick skin at an early age because she was a military brat, and she got that thick skin, so it kind of just kept passing down. My dad's side of the family wasn't really military affiliated at all. Like my grandfather, his dad, served for about 2 years during the Korean War, never saw any combat, got out because of his eyesight. His eyes were bad. So he was only in for a couple of years, but that's it on my dad's side of the family. My mom's side of the family is the one that dates back to the American Revolution. And she gave us tough skin as a kid. So when I joined the Army, obviously I had no clue what I was getting into. No one really does until you show up one day and they're on that bus yelling at you.
Yeah,
And you don't know exactly how you're going to get it until you're in the thick of it. And I wasn't prepared at all, but I at least had enough thick skin to know that this wasn't personal. It was to keep me alive, to keep him alive, to keep him alive. And that's how my mentality was.
absolutely. And I will say, you were 12 Bravo. Some of my best friends in the army that are still active are 12 Bravos. I actually, when I went to Tennessee to go visit my daughter, I ran into one of my buddies who was on my third deployment with me, and it was like I just, he's a platoon sergeant now. He's an E7, and I got to see him when he was a PFC, and to see like the
Yeah.
transformation and
That's
like
how it is now. Like the guys that were in at like I swear I had an E2 Gutierrez. Now he's got a diamond.
yeah,
And I'm, brand new. Like I remember when he was a little butterball coming out of basic, now he's a jacked freaking first sergeant. And it's cool to see our comrades freaking get those high ranks.
absolutely. I always prided myself as when I was an NCO, I prided myself in the fact that I didn't care if somebody was coming for my spot because I wanted my guys to do better than me. I wanted them to succeed
Yeah.
better than me. There was no ego involved. And so, yeah, seeing these guys now that were privates back in the day, and now they're succeeding, their platoon sergeants, their first sergeants, their sergeant
Yeah.
majors, just makes me so happy.
Me too. And I really am appreciative for their progress and all that, because I was their NCO at one point. I was doing their counselings and, getting them rides home from the bar and, all this stuff and, trying to keep them in line, as a brand new Joe. And, now they're companies. And, I got one guy that's at the Sergeant Major Academy right now. So I'm just like, I wish I could have stayed in because I'd be, right there alongside you. But at the same time, everybody has their own path. And, I guess the Army wasn't my path.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you go on that next deployment. Did you guys, or that deployment you're slated on for 8 months down the road? Um, was that to Iraq or Afghanistan?
So we went to Fort Irwin to train up for Iraq. We went to the box for 30 days, trained up at NTC, wound up not going to Iraq. So our orders changed to Afghanistan, like pretty much like while we were it was like 2 weeks out or something. Bam, they were like, no, Iraq, we need you in Afghanistan to do route clearance. We're getting nailed, Korengal Valley, Tangi Valley, Helmand Province. We needed RTPs everywhere.
Yeah.
Because IEDs were huge. We're getting huge in Afghanistan now. They realized that could really just hurt us, tactically. So now they started amping up, their IED attacks. Where at the beginning of that war, it was just ambushes and stuff. It was actually warfare, not IED attack. So all the RCPs, all the engineer units that were slotted to deploy at that time were all getting funneled into Afghanistan.
Absolutely, absolutely. What year did you end up going to Afghanistan?
So that was 08. That was 2008, 2009. We went and we were pretty much all over the entire country. Like we flew into Bagram. We pretty much did a little bit there. Went down to Kandahar, did a little bit there. Went to the Pakistan border, did some stuff there. So they needed us all over during that time period because the IEDs were just numerous in that country. And it's weird because they were all homemade and it wasn't like they were significant, but they were enough to disarm you and then to ambush you.
Absolutely. So a little crazy thing is we might have crossed paths because I was in the Korengal Valley in 2007, 2008.
We probably did.
Yeah.
We probably did. Most likely, we probably ran supplies up to y'all or something. We probably cleared up through there. I know we did a couple things. We went up to Restrepo. I don't know if it was called Restrepo when you were there, but it was called Restrepo when I was there. Keaton, we went to Cobb Keaton a couple times as well.
I was there. I'm actually in the documentary of Strepo, as well as Korengal, the documentaries, and so that was my first deployment, and like she was crazy, she was wild.
We were out of Fenty after Alabama for a little while, so we ran we ran to all those cops. We ran the supplies to, and we'd clear like 4 or 5 hours before our clips would leave and still get freaking annihilated.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So on that deployment, was there anything that you experienced that like really, I mean, aside from the heightened sense of awareness and like and some of those classic PTSD moments that people would identify with, is there anything that you experienced that really haunted you to this day, or until you decide to get help?
Honestly, civilian casualties like that. I mean, soldiers died, ANA died, police died, but the civilians, the kids, you know, that was the big thing for me, you know, the children and the women. And, you know, they treated their women like crap, you know, I guess their kids too, but, you know, to just drive alongside the road and just see him laying there, you know, like nothing, you know. And you know, there was a guy, we go through this village all the time, and there was a guy, and every time we saw this guy, he was walking like nothing, like just walking normal, but his wife was carrying all this stuff. She had stuff on her head, she had stuff on her arms, she had stuff tied to her. She was carrying like all their groceries home, you know. And he's just walking, you know, like nonchalant. You know, obviously we couldn't do anything because, you know, that's their culture, and understand that. But 2 weeks later, we see her strung up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you know, how do you not get that image out of your head? I mean, it's one thing to see fallen comrades. It's one thing, you know, to watch somebody die in front of you, you know, but it's another thing to just come across like people every day. They're just trying to live their lives, you know, in the middle of this war. And, you know, to see these people, you know, mission after mission, you know, wave at us, you know, we throw candy at them, water bottles, you know, stuff like that. And then just to come through and see the whole village wiped out, you know, we're just like, I don't know how to get over that. Like, how do I get that image out of my head of kids strung up and, you know, drug around, you know, by horseback, you know, on, you know, tied to horses? Like, how do you get out of that, you know?
Yeah. And so, you know, I think one of the biggest things too is like in that moment, you can't do anything about it, right? Like
Mm-mm.
you know, our job wasn't to stop
Gotta
that.
keep going. Nope, you gotta keep going.
Yeah. Our job was to take the fight to the enemy, and regardless as to what we see over here, we can't touch that. We can't go to that, right? Like we just got to keep going because there's a mission in front of us. And I can definitely understand why that's wrong. And I think for me, like, you know, the understanding of like they were just people, that everyday people that were just like you said, trying to live their lives in a country that was at war. That fucking sucks to actually watch and see.
Yeah, it was, man. And you know, I didn't really think about that until I came home and started actually thinking about that deployment. You know, and even the deployments after that, whatever, like, you know, just the civilian casualties, and that's in all conflicts. You know, it's not just Iraq, Afghanistan, that's just everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
the civilian casualties like that, that's something I never really thought about. You know, when I joined the army, honestly, was yeah, I knew I was going to war. I knew I was going to have to, you know, take it to the enemy and, you know, all that. But to have to deal with the civilian casualty part of it, you know, that's something people don't really talk about. It's just a number on a screen. You know,
Yeah.
there were 40 civilian casualties, blah blah blah. But you know, for the people that are there and that see that, you know, see those kids mangled, see those women mangled, you know, it's something that you don't forget, and it makes you, even today when I go out in public and I see kids, you know, it just takes me back because, you know, sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of the kid. Like I was at the aquatic center. It's a water park in my hometown. I take my kids to sometimes. You know, sometimes I'll take a glimpse of the kid. I'll look back at that same kid, and he's all mangled up.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
look back, and he's a normal kid again. So you know, it takes me back to that because that's one part of the combat that I have not been able to shake completely. I
Yeah.
can shake the fallen comrades. I can shake the A&A blown to bits. I couldn't shake watching kids get dealt with like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things when you're in recovery that people don't really understand, or when you start to do counseling, is that like you can be fine, but those things that you see in your brain, them shits don't go away. You just
Mm-mm.
you learn how to deal with them and how to internalize it in a way where it's not destructive. You know, there's an image that I see from my third deployment damn near every time I close my eyes, but it doesn't shake me the way it used to, and it doesn't rattle me. I kind of accept that, and then like, okay, this is something that I'm gonna live with for the rest of my life. It's okay to feel it and to see it. So you get back from that deployment, and you start to reminisce on the things that happened at deployment. How did that affect you?
Well, as soon as I got back from that deployment, I could tell I was a different person. You know, I could, because we, I really didn't know if I even wanted to be in the Army anymore after that, honestly. Like, I really was like contemplating not re-upping and getting out. You know, all the guys were. They, you know, I think half my platoon got out after that, pretty much, because, you know, it wasn't something I think we wanted to go through again, you know. And for me, I was at that point in my life where I didn't care. Like, I knew the Army. I knew everything about it, ins and outs, like the back of my hand. I could eat, sleep, and breathe the Army without blinking. And it was something I was familiar with. So I wound up re-upping, you know, for another, you know, contract and staying in. And I really didn't realize, you know, that was probably not a smart decision, because I started drifting, and that's when my mental health started taking over, like, really bad. And I got to the point where, thankfully, I didn't go the drug and alcohol route. I didn't go that route. You know, a lot of my friends did. You know, a lot of my guys did. They went the drugs and alcohol route, and I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. But for me, I didn't go that route. I went the robot route. Like, I literally just became a zombie, a shell. Like, I walked around like I was, you know, just on autopilot for 3 years.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking about re-enlisting and everything like that, I found myself doing that too. You know, I would get to this point where I'm like, fuck the Army. I hate it. I don't want anything to do with it, right? And then something would happen where it would make me fall in love with the Army again, or with my job. And I'm like, sign me up for another month. And then as soon as I signed that contract, it just, I'm like, fuck, do that.
And that's definitely how it was for me, especially coming back from Afghanistan, because, you know, I was honestly ready to get out. And then all of a sudden, our unit got a bunch of school slots for all these different cool schools to go to.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the schools I wanted to always go to was Urban Master Breacher Course at Fort Leonard Wood, and they teach you how to breach all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I got slotted to go, and I got to go, and that's what reeled me freaking back in, pretty much, because I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait for the next one. We're gonna blow some Haji doors off, like, you know, all that. And, you know, it was really just a big hype for me, just to, like, that lasted probably all about a week or so, and then I was just like, nah, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I can relate. You know, when I was going to re-enlist, they're like, you can go to any school that you want to go. You want to go to Ranger School? And at first, it's like, yeah, I want to go to Ranger School. And then I thought about it, I was like, man, I'm not that.
You want to go to selection? No.
No, and you know, I have a friend that was like, were you a Ranger? Were you Special Forces? I was like, no, man, I was none of those. I was an airborne. I was the 0.01% of the Army. That was the 0.01 of the country, right? But you know, I never wanted to go to Ranger School because I'm like, man, I don't have that level of dedication in me, right? Like, I don't want to walk for 18 days straight with no sleep. Like, I'm good. I realized that my dedication level is that low.
Yeah, definitely. That's how because, you know, I had a lot of guys too. They wanted to do selection and Ranger School and all that, Sapper School, all that. Sapper School, you know, was pretty big too, but for us. But, you know, a big thing was a selection they wanted to do, and they're all like, oh, I'm gonna do selection. And, you know, I spent a month training for selection, you know, 24 hours a day almost.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's you, man. I'm just gonna hang out here and do my thing. I know where my dedication stops, you know, and I'm very dedicated, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know if I was ready for anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you signed another contract, and did you deploy again to Afghanistan or Iraq?
Went to Korea, man.
Korea. Oh,
man. Came down on orders to Korea. I was literally I think I was at BNOC. I want to say I was at BNOC and or so ANOC, BNOC, one. I was somewhere. I was at a leadership school, and I got the orders, and they were like, you know, we're going to Korea, and I was like, no, I do not want to freaking go to Korea. You know, I was like, no, like I had literally just started going to behavioral health, and you know, I was trying to get back, you know, what I'd lost, and I was trying to get back, you know, that feeling of like actually being a person again. And I started kind of feeling that way a little bit. Yeah. And then I got those orders to Korea, and I was like, no. So I went to Korea right after that, pretty much, and spent a year there. And you know, the civilian side of Korea was really awesome. It really was. Like that, I will always say that when people ask me how Korea was, I will always say the civilian side was great. The army side was horrible, especially for a combat engineer, because we were right on the DMZ, and anytime those idiots up north did anything, we went on lockdown, and we were always on lockdown and couldn't do shit except train. And it was pretty much a year-long training thing. Like it really was. But the civilian side, when we got a glimpse of that, or when I got a glimpse of that, was pretty good. It was cool to go out and see Korea, but army side was horrible. And that just made me go back down into that mental health hellhole again, to where I hated the army and regretted my freaking contract.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like you know, that's the thing is like you go from the army where you're, I mean, not necessarily off every weekend, but you have weekends, right? As long
Yeah.
as somebody doesn't act a fool, you got weekends. And then you're going over to a country that, like you said, is right on the DMZ, right on, you know, right on that border of like insanity and sanity, and you guys get locked down. So you go from having free time to being isolated a majority of
Yeah.
the time, and that can terrorize your mental health.
Yeah, and we were mechanized too, so that wasn't really good either. Like I like mechanized. I really like tanks and stuff. They're cool, but in Korea, it was just a nightmare. Honestly, it really was. And like I really hated that whole year there. I got to do some cool stuff. I really did. In the field and things like that. We got to do some cool shit. But you know, overall for me, that was, you know, that was, I was still on that decline. Like I was ready, you know, to get out. Like I was waiting for that contract to be up so I could get out. I was done, man. And there was nothing that was pulling me back. Like really, especially during that year in Korea. Like I just kept my head down. You know, everybody goes to Korea, they party, they get, you know, they get demoted,
Yeah.
they get in deep shit, they get all kinds of stuff. Me, I just kept my head down, did my job, did my year, and got out.
Yeah. So you ride that year out. Where do you end up going after Korea?
Go right back to Fort Riley. So I go right back to the first engineers, but they're like, but I don't go back to them. I go back to first ID.
Hmm.
They had a small detachment of engineers attached to the first ID that was not a part of the first engineer battalion. Eventually it all merged. You know, all the engineers emerged. Before it was just BSTBs.
Okay.
And then if you were an engineer in a BSTB, it pretty much merged with other engineer companies on post to become brigade engineer battalions, I guess, towards the end of my career. But yeah, I went back there. They were mechanized. They had just became mechanized. So I went from mechanized back to mechanized. I was trying to go to another light unit.
Yeah.
And the Army had changed everything with engineering, and they had made it pretty much 90% of the engineer companies out there mechanized.
Yeah.
And, you know, the warfare changed. The war was almost over, you know, so they were thinking long term. So, you know, our job changed again. You know, my job changed 4 times I was in. I was still 12 Bravo, but I did 4 different kinds of things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so go back to Fort Riley, and, you know, pretty much get medically retired out of there, you know, PTSD, all kinds of stuff. And that's it for the Army career.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get medically retired for PTSD, and you get out. I know for me, when I got out, I had a massive mental health decline.
Yeah.
Not just because and there's a lot of unseen things for me. I know it was because, you know, I was losing my way of life that I knew for so long, a career essentially. I was losing my career due to circumstances that were outside of my control, but also, um, nobody taught me how. You know, nobody set me up for success when I got out. Right, so like you get out, and they're kind of like, "Hey, man, you're on your own." Right, like they do the TAPS program where they teach you how to interview, they teach you how to dress for the job that you want, and all that shit, but they don't teach you what happens, or they don't counsel you what happens when shit goes wrong, like south. And the transition period out is one of the biggest times that we see a lot of veterans become homeless
Yeah.
because the financial portion is out, right? Like you're in a fight with the VA where you're not getting paid for anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. I've seen it 3 years where people are getting out and they're not getting paid 3 years. You're unemployable because people just aren't hiring veterans at that time.
Yeah.
And then and you've got a loss of sense of purpose. So you go down this route of either a chronic mental health crisis or a drug and alcohol addiction. And and I'm not saying that you went down a chronic mental health crisis, but I told the line between both. How did the transition out affect you?
I freaking hated that transition, honestly. The I guess you said TAPS program. they they pretty much shooed me out, honestly. And they were like, it was a couple weeks long, I think, that program,
Yeah.
getting out. But it was, you're right. They didn't really prepare me. I mean, they taught me how to make a resume, but honestly, if I already knew how to do a resume. I already knew how to interview with people. Like I kind of already had my head on my shoulders. The big thing for me was the VA part of getting out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing for everybody, always is the VA part, because, getting all that in a row, thankfully I had a smooth transition with that. All my stuff was documented. Like it was very smooth, when I went through it, thankfully. A lot of people were not as lucky as I was, but I made sure that everything was documented, because when I first went to behavioral health starting in 2010, I made sure that they noted everything that was going on, because I knew at some point I was going to have to deal with the VA, and they were going to have to, do their thing. And I tried to make it as painless as possible. So I told everything. Like, I didn't hold anything back. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I didn't want them to think I was feeling a certain way when I wasn't. I told them everything, and they deemed it necessary for me not to continue with a career in the military unless if I changed my MOS, and I told them I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do that. I didn't meet the 12 Bravo can't talk 12
Yeah.
Bravo pool list. The pool list.
Yeah.
I didn't meet the pool list, so I had to change MOSs, and they just wound up medically retiring me because I couldn't. I wasn't going to change. I wasn't going to change jobs. Like, I could still perform my job at a higher level than 90% of my company. And, to take that away from me, I just decided just to say, screw it. So I got out. The VA transition was smooth, thankfully, because of all the documentation and having my ducks in a row, honestly. And I had a good guy on the civilian side help me when I was transitioning out. But the whole transition mentally was just horrible. I was terrified, honestly. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, was I going to go to college? Was I going to try to get a job? Like, how long is the VA going to take, to pay me? Like, what do I need to do? And you're right. A lot of my friends did become homeless because of that. That transitional period, I had one, you said 3 years. I think I had one guy wait almost 2. And, he was homeless for, a year and a half of that, pretty much living in his car, driving around the state of California. Like,
It's insane. It's absolutely and anybody listening to this, you think that, you may think, oh, hey, look, there's a given time frame of when they notify you you're getting out of the army due to a medical situation. You get either medically separated or retired, and then you get out comfortable. No. I think for me, mine was a 3-month window. Yours have been the same.
yeah, it
Uh,
was about the same.
it was like streamlined. Like, you get that notification of, hey, you're on a permanent profile where you can't do anything. Like, for me, I couldn't perform airborne duties because of TBI, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I couldn't jump out of planes anymore. I was on a dead man's profile, so I couldn't conduct a PT test. And then, I was literally sitting in an office as the training room NCO, not performing my duties. So it's kind of like, okay, you can no longer fulfill your role in the army, so you need to be streamlined out. And I went, literally 3 months. It was the notification. Then I met with my Pueblo later that month or later that week, and then I had my evaluations from the VA, and then it was like really streamlined. It was like, okay, we're getting back. My issue was that when I got out, they said, okay, you should have your results from your VA decision in like 2 weeks. So I'm like, okay, 2 weeks, and then like almost 3 months later, I hadn't got
Yeah,
yet,
yeah,
and I had to call them, and I was like, what the fuck? And they were like, oh, whatever. I had to get my senator involved, and my senator actually was in Washington State at Fort Lewis, where they do
yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah.
the
I know.
decisions.
Yep.
And he went in there, and he was my senator was a veteran, and he went in there, and actually he was like, you're gonna shit yourself. Your packet is right on the top of a stack of papers that is collecting dust. And I was like, motherfucker, seriously? He's like, yeah, all they had to do is literally, you've been approved. All they had to do was stamp
Yeah,
and send it away, and you're
and put
fine.
it in the computer.
Yeah, yeah, and I see that happen to so many people where they get denied claims of, service connected disabilities, where they say, that's not service connected. But how is it not service connected if it didn't happen? If it happened on a deployment, how is it not? How is it not service connected if the person entered the army and they were normal and then got out and their life has completely changed? How is that not? One of the things that I wanted to ask you is I see a lot of veterans that get out and they don't access the VA disabilities or their entitlements from the VA or benefits. Did you, when you were starting to get out, did you look at that and be like, I don't think that I deserve it?
I honestly, I don't think that I deserve. I don't think I thought about it that way because honestly, when I got out of the army, I was literally trying to save my life.
Yeah.
I was literally trying to save my life, and the Topeka VA in Kansas
Yeah.
really helped me with that. They got inpatient programs, and literally as soon as I could get into their inpatient program, it was a 30-day program. It's called like PDLR or something like that.
Hmm.
I got into it. I utilized the VA services as soon as I could because I literally was trying to save my life, like medication, therapy, whatever I could do, because I was on that edge. I was close, and it was the closest I had ever been, and I spent 3 years on that edge, trying to figure out a way to keep me away from falling over. And I used the VA. I used local resources in my town to try. I did everything I could because I knew there would be a time where all hope would be lost at some point, and that extra step might happen. So,
Yeah.
did I feel like? What was the question you asked?
Did you ever like tell yourself, I feel like I don't deserve this, or somebody else deserves it more than I do?
So every time I go into the VA, I feel that way, especially here where I live, because where I live, the VA, usually it's an older VA crowd, but if you go down to Jacksonville, it's a younger VA crowd, and there's a lot of amputees and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll walk in the doors and I'll see those guys, and I'll be like, do I really? I do belong there. I do belong at the VA. Of course I do. But there is. Does somebody deserve it more than me? I'm sure there is somebody out there that deserves the VA more than me. Honestly, but for me, it's where I need to be, and it's not a matter of do I deserve it. It's a matter of I need it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I've seen a lot of veterans that get out and they're like, oh, I just served my term limit and I didn't, deploy or whatever. And it's like, but the VA is there, right? Like the VA is the Veterans Administration. You are a veteran. Like you are
Yeah.
entitled to those, right? And one of the things I want to say, and I don't know if you know this or not, I've kind of got a little deeper look at it, but if you file for benefits through the VA and you don't even go to the clinic, right? Like you don't get seen or whatever, because you are a case file within the VA system, it helps the VA get more funding for veterans, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, it sounds like a pyramid scheme, but it's true, right? Because you're adding your name to a list of veterans that are already there, and they can help get the funding for the VA. So yeah, that was something that I had seen a lot of guys do, and I wanted to ask if that was like something that you had went through. So you talked about like being on the edge, man, like just straddling that edge, walking that fine blade. What saved your life?
Wrestling. Honestly, I really believe that is what saved my life, because that is the time of my life where I was really, like I said, from I got out in 2015.
Yeah.
I spent about 3 years after that trying to figure out what was next for me. I really did. I went to college, uh, enjoyed college, really did, but didn't know if that was actually going to satisfy me and make me happy, especially with the career that I was going for and all that. I didn't know if that was going to fulfill what the Army fulfilled for me, if that makes sense. And then I refound professional wrestling. I'd been a professional wrestling fan my whole life. My grandfather was a professional wrestler, like we talked about before. Always wanted to be a wrestler, just never had the chance because 9/11, and then joined the Army. Found an indie wrestling show out in Kansas where I retired from, and out by Fort Riley, and fell in love with wrestling again. And that is what pulled me back, because I kept going to those shows every month. Paid $5, sit front row to yell at some wrestlers every month. Like, that's what I look forward to every month. I'm not even kidding, for about a year.
Yeah.
Until I messaged the promoter and was like, "Hey, do you have any extra opportunities? Like, do you need help with anything?" And he was like, "I'm going to reopen my school. Are you interested in training to become a wrestler?" And that's what saved my life right there. Was as soon as I started training to become a wrestler, I knew that I'd found the new thing for me, the new Army, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. What about professional wrestling helped you out? Because I know it's different for everybody that wrestles. Some people say I like the roar of the crowd, I like the anticipation, I like the anxiety. What is it for you?
It's a release for me. It really is. Like, honestly, because I've kind of strayed away from therapy right now. I
Hmm.
really have, because the last couple therapists I've had, either I probably didn't enjoy their help, or they didn't enjoy my criticisms of their help, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I need to give it a shot again. I really do.
yeah,
But back then I was not in therapy at all. I was taking medication and things like that from the VA, but I was not actively in therapy. So wrestling was like that way to deal with that outlet. It was the way to release all that aggression, the pent up things. When anniversaries would come around, I'd deal with that, in the wrestling ring. It's a way for me to transform and to project what I'm feeling inside outwardly in a positive manner, if that makes sense.
no, no, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. It would be, I would feel the same way if somebody said it about extreme sports like snowboarding or skateboarding or whatever. Like, I can definitely understand it, and it makes a lot of sense. You you had a potential career-ending injury last year.
I did.
Yeah, let's talk about that, man. How did
So I
that
had a
happen?
heart Yeah, I had a heart attack last year. For those that don't know, I had a heart attack in March of last year, the beginning of March, and that was a potential wrestling career-ending injury, and that got me back down in the dumps again. Obviously, major heart attack, single bypass surgery. Honestly, thought my career was over,
Yeah,
and I spent about a month on the couch in my chair, debating on if my career was over, what was next, what's going to be the new wrestling now,
yeah,
if wrestling can't be the future for me. So I spent that whole month, because I didn't know. I was waiting on my heart to heal and my sternum bone to heal, before the doctors could tell me anything about what was next for me wrestling wise. So I just started trying to internally brainstorm what was next for me. And the only conclusion I came to was I was going to start volunteering. I was going to start volunteering in local things around my community, whether it's like a boys and girls club, or, I was going to try to find something. I was going to start volunteering. That is the conclusion I came to. But thankfully, I was blessed with good news that there was no damage to my heart. And eventually, after a bunch of testing and a bunch of doctors' approvals, I was allowed to start wrestling again.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
So my morale
And
went right
one of the
back up.
things one of the things I admire about you is like the never give up attitude, right? If something is going to happen, I need to figure out what is next for me. And because at this point in your life, it's not just you, right? It's your wife, your kids. right? It's not just you at this point. So giving up is not an option. So, I really admire that about you. That it's like, what is next for me, and how do I get to that phase of my life? And thankfully, that didn't have to happen for you, and you can get back to what you love. Stepping
Yeah,
back,
definitely.
go ahead.
No, I was saying, yeah, definitely, because I'm already a stay-at-home dad. Like, I don't work. I'm literally a stay-at-home dad. I have been for the last 4 years. I wrestle on the weekends, and other than that, my wife works from home for a pharmaceutical company, so she is tapped out from 8 to 4 every day. So I am the stay-at-home dad slash weekend wrestler,
Yeah,
and I'm happy with that. I really am, and I would have been fine with that even if there was no wrestling. But thankfully, the heart attack wasn't as severe as it could have been, and I'm blessed for that. And I didn't have to find a new niche or a new thing to do.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How was it stepping back into the ring? How for your mental health?
Really good, really good. And I have a show this weekend actually in Kansas. And me and the family are taking a road trip. We leave tomorrow to make our way out there, and this is our third family road trip, so I really enjoy these family road trips. That's the great part about wrestling for me too, as well, is that I take my family with me on the road, and we do cool things. Last month we went to Dallas for a show, and we all went to the Medal of Honor Museum, and that was an experience in itself because it just opened in March. And I'm telling you, Sean, if you're ever in Dallas, go there. The Medal of Honor Museum is amazing, and the stuff that they have there. They have a whole thing on Cobb Keating,
Yeah,
and what happened there, and a lot of GWAT stuff there. So it's very eye opening, and that's the great thing about wrestling right now for me and my mentality is I can share it with my family.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's really cool, man, that you get to share that with your family. I've interviewed some other guys that get to share it with their grandkids, and they share how much it means to them to be able to share that with them, and that's really cool. But we're gonna shift gears, man, and we're gonna talk wrestling for just a few minutes. If you had to put, and you might get this question a lot as a wrestling fan, I've got to ask it. If you had a Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers, it could be anybody, or who would you put on that Mount Rushmore?
So any four on the Mount Rushmore. So I've never really actually thought about this, honestly, about my Mount Rushmore. Flair obviously would be one. He'd be on my Mount Rushmore. I would have to say Undertaker would be on my Mount Rushmore. He'd be number two. Austin would be three, and then four. I don't know. Four. There's like three people in fourth place. You know what I mean? I got Sting. I got Hogan, and then I got The Rock. So that four. I always have to say I got like seven on my Mount Rushmore, I guess, or six.
Well, those three all contributed something during that era, right? That attitude era,
Yeah,
and something massive. And so I can understand why there's that debacle there.
and my Mount Rushmore is honestly the way I make my Mount Rushmore is it's based on strictly who was the best at that time. Like, you know what I mean? Like the '80s, it was like Flair. I mean, I guess into the '90s as well, but like from the like Stone Cold Steve Austin will always be on the Mount Rushmore because he kept WWF in business. Period.
Yeah.
Like he kept them from shutting down and WCW taking control of everything. Honestly, I think so. He will always be on the Mount Rushmore. But like Hogan, Sting, and The Rock, they all contributed great things in their careers as well. It's just I just can't pick between those three for some reason for that last spot.
Yeah, yeah. If I had to pick five, like the eras that I've been alive, from the '80s to now, I'd go Hogan, um, Austin, early 2000s, Angle,
Yeah,
Cena,
Angle's good.
And then Roman, top five.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they Cena, man, it's just crazy. I met the guy. I wasn't a fan of him, but I can't deny, that the man put a lasting impact on professional wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, he carried WWE on his back for years. He really did. Like once he took the belt from JBL at that WrestleMania, that was all she wrote. And it was Cena's company for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he didn't really get hurt a lot either, so he was always there.
Yeah,
He was always there.
Yeah, he's like one of the safest workers too. Him and the Miz, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then going into this era, past in the 2020s, I mean, Roman absolutely carried the company on his back through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And even after the pandemic, and I was mildly surprised that they decided to put the strap on Cody, just simply for the fact that Roman had that aura about him, right? Like to a degree, I felt like the bloodline kind of played his course, but Roman was that constant, and you couldn't deny the aura that he had. He had that Undertaker aura, he had that Austin aura, right? Like every time he walked into an establishment or walked into a building or a stadium or arena, like the fucking roof would come off the place, and you don't get that with very many people.
No, and I was happy that Roman finally got that, because when Shield first came on the scene, I was like, I was like, Roman's really got, like, I knew Seth was going to be all right, Moxley was going to be all right, I knew they were going to be all right, but Roman, I was like, I think that's going to be like their next big guy at some point down the road. They tried it didn't work, and then I think he got leukemia, and had to go away for a little bit, came back, and he rocked it ever since. And then once they started this bloodline thing and the tribal chief and all that, like, man, I was so happy, because he was finally over. He may not have been over in like a babyface way, but he was finally over with the fans, because there for a while the fans really didn't like him being shoved down their throats.
Yeah.
It was like with Cena as well at one point during his career, like they just kept feeding us, both of them, and we were booing them and all that. And they were wondering like what was going on, like what happened. But, once that tribal chief kicked off.
Yeah. Now it's crazy because you get a lot of wrestling fans that are very biased and partial, and they'll be like, okay, my Mount Rushmore is my favorite wrestlers. Those guys aren't my favorite wrestlers of the periods, which is fucking crazy. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah, no, it's not the same for me. Like I was saying, my Mount Rushmores is pretty much who I think contributed very to the success of wrestling at that time. That's what my Mount Rushmore is. Now, if you wanted me to talk about favorite wrestlers from like the 80s and stuff, Flair's number 2 on the list. The Steamboat's gonna be number 1.
Yeah. So if I were to go to 80s, Macho Man, I was a Hulkamaniac growing up, but when I became older, I loved Macho Man. He was a hell of a promo. I've grown to actually appreciate people who can talk on the mic and not just wrestle. But I mean, Macho Man had everything. He had the physique. He had he had the ability to actually have a match and carry the match. He was a hell of a promo, and this character was absolutely insane because it was very blurred lines between reality and fiction.
And him and Steamboat had some good matches.
Yeah, absolutely. And even then, like, in the 90s, I liked Austin, but I was more of an Undertaker and Kane guy, and Sting, right? Because I don't know, man. When Sting changed up and he became the Crow Sting, I was like, I fucking loved it. I loved it.
I was done with it. And like that whole like 2-year storyline he had with Hollywood Hogan, where he would you wouldn't even see him. He'd just be in the rafters. Like he didn't wrestle for like a year.
Yeah.
And he just showed up and did appearances and beat downs, and that was it. And that was what I loved when he changed into the Crow. And I did like Surfer Sting as well in the 80s, but the Crow Sting, he was very mysterious and methodical, and had the black bat, and as a kid you wanted a black bat.
Yeah. I think that the biggest blunder WCW had was when they put him in NWO, because he was the only person in the whole company who had not gone to NWO or going in between Black and White and Wolfpack. And when they put him in the NWO, I was like, man, that is, as an adult now I can be like, that was a big blunder. They should never have done that.
They should have kept that Crow thing going, and obviously the botch at Starrcade that year, or that during him and Hogan's feud, really screwed that up as well. The 3 count botch or whatever that happened with Nick Patrick.
Yeah.
But Sting was always, I always loved Sting as a kid, and my grandpa was, he always talked about Sting and how he was a good guy, and a lot of people, thought Sting was just a bodybuilder, and all that, but no, he was so much more than that. And then when that character evolved from the surfer guy to the crow, and the all black and the cool face paint, shoot, I wanted my face painted like that.
Yeah. Halloween one year, I wanted to be the Crow Sting, and my parents would not buy me the costume for Sting, but I could use all of my clothes and tailor them to look like Goldberg. So, I mean, kind of trade off. I was not a Goldberg fan growing up, and I'm not now. 2000s, the early 2000s, man, that was the ruthless aggression era. Who were some of your favorites during that period?
Benoit's always got to be that one. So is Angle as well. Benoit and Angle were really good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the American Badass Undertaker as well, because it was new, and it was something that we had not seen before, I guess, as well, because we were used to the Dead Man and all that, and lightning bolts and the gongs and all that. But he's coming out to Kid Rock and Limp Bizkit, and like, this is awesome, because you actually see like a human side of him, and then you see the evolution back into the Dead Man after that. But the ruthless aggression era, that was a great time in wrestling. Attitude era is really good too. Ruthless, like that whole 8 years, I think, but all the way up until probably maybe even 2010, I guess.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit. You had Eddie Guerrero. You had Raw and SmackDown jacked, post WCW. So you had Booker T and all that too as well. So that was awesome, because it was, combination of the guys you used to see on Nitro and WWE too.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that 2002 SmackDown roster was the best roster I've ever seen on period, because you had Christian, or you had Edge, Benoit, Jericho, Ray, Eddie, and Angle, and those dudes just took wrestling and elevated it to the next level. And some of those matches, I mean, you'll never see again, right? Like one of my favorite ladder matches that happened on a Raw, of all things, was RVD and Eddie Guerrero for the Intercontinental title. That shit was amazing. One of the best ladder matches I've ever seen. And that doesn't take away from Razor and Shawn. I mean, that was another great high level caliber ladder match. But personally, that match was my favorite. Go ahead.
And like you were talking about, it was a Raw from 1998 until 2007. Raw and SmackDown had main event pay-per-view WrestleMania quality matches. The title changed hands. You never knew. You never knew if it was going to change hands or not. And then all of a sudden it would change hands. You flip the channel to WCW, Hogan's got the belt. He ain't losing that thing.
Yeah.
So you flip the channel back over, and you got Mick Foley facing The Rock, the night Mick Foley finally won the belt. And, you never knew what you were going to get with WWE back then. And, you were talking about that ladder match, and it made me think about how WWF always had almost WrestleMania main events on a SmackDown or a Raw.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's one of the conversations that I have with a lot of people in regards to Benoit. How do you feel? Because you mentioned that Benoit was one of your favorites during that time era, and what we know of everything, without jumping into conspiracy theories, how is it for you harder to talk about Benoit being one of your favorite wrestlers?
See, I still watch his matches.
Yeah,
I still watch and study his matches. I do. Everyone knows what happened.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing that happened, understandably. It really is. But at the same time, I can't take away the wrestling aspect of what he brought to the world. I mean, Chris Benoit, is different than the real Chris, So for me, I still study his matches. I really do, because, he was a really good technician, and he made things flow so smoothly. and, I know a lot of people out there, horrible thing what happened with him, and it's a touchy subject. It really is. But for me, I still watch him as the wrestler and not as what he did.
Yep.
It will always irk me, obviously, because when people bring up his name, it's like, do I get happy or do I get sad? Do I get angry? Like, there's a lot of emotions when his name comes up.
Yeah.
But for me, I still watch the wrestling. I really do. I don't really care about anything else. I try to study where I can and when I can. A lot of people are like that with Hogan right now, and I'll study him too as well. Just to see if I can learn anything. I'm not accepting what he did. I'm not congratulating it, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I'm not ignoring the wrestling aspect of what he brought.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got a few wrestling action figures up here. I've got AJ Styles right here. I've got a Finn Balor up there. And then I've got one that's at the top of my shelf, very top, and that's a WCW Benoit action figure.
Nice.
Benoit is my favorite technician of all time. I don't even care. Him and Angle tied because I enjoy technical wrestling. I enjoy that aspect of it because it brings the sports into the entertainment, right? So yeah, I agree, and that's the same thing. Like when people say, "Oh, how can you like Benoit?" I'm like, because I can separate the person from the performer, right? Like
Yeah.
the person, he made a fucked up decision that I mean, he can't live with now, but that will go down in history as one of the most heinous things that wrestlers done. But the performer was outstanding.
Yeah.
He was like he was. If I had to put him in a place, he would be something or somebody that wrestlers should strive to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Like just the flawless technical ability that he had. And the crazy thing is, he trained under Bret Hart and under Stu Hart, which is insane.
Yeah, and anytime, even when I was training with Dr. Tom, he talked about Benoit, and you can't deny what he brought to wrestling. You can't, and you like you talked about, you can separate the person and the performer, and if you can do that, then you can enjoy the wrestling part. I mean, some people probably can't ignore what he did as a person, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
But for me, growing up as a Benoit fan, since his Stampede days, since when he was wearing a mask in Japan and stuff, like I could separate that, because I still enjoy his wrestling, and him and Angle had some great matches. My favorite match with him, I think, though, is him and Bret Hart for the Owen Hart tribute match on Nitro. That match was really good, in terms of technicality, I guess, and I can separate it, but at the same time, I am striving to be a technician like him. I want some technical stuff added to my movesets. So I've always been told to study Chris Benoit, and I can separate that.
Absolutely. Moving on to the 2010s, man. There's a lot of people in 2010s. Who would you say is some of your top favorites?
2010s. That's Unmasked Kane. He really did a lot in the 2010s. Kane actually, I think he really achieved a lot once they took that mask off of him. And, he went, even though he did a lot with the mask on, I think when he took the mask off finally, when he was tagging with RVD, and even before he went on his first world heavyweight title run, he really was that top monster heel. And even, I guess, when he became corporate Kane and all that as well. But I really liked Kane back in those 2010 days. And he was huge. He was so huge back then.
I think he was big, but the thing is, like, he's always been big, but the thing is you never got to see how big he actually was because he had that singlet on, right? Like the on. You didn't really get to see the physique behind it, man. And like, God, when he unmasked, I remember that. I think I was in high school and it terrorized me. I was fucking afraid of him. I've never been afraid of, I mean, when I was a baby, or a kid, Undertaker, but I had never been terrified like that watching a character come to life and just seeing that shit. And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, my up until that point, we were skeptical on if they were going to take the mask off because they had been teasing it him and RVD were in that tag team, and RVD was like, you don't need the mask, Kane. The mask doesn't make the man, and all that. And I was skeptical. I was like, nah, they're not gonna. There's no way they're gonna take the mask off of him. There's no way. And my uncle was like, yeah, they are. And then he loses that match, I think, against Triple H or something, and he has to unmask, and he takes the mask off and he chokeslams RVD. But after that, it was a mystique. Because then I think the following week he came out with a towel on his head, and he started that was his first look post mask with the towel on the head. And I really loved that part of Kane, even though I was not a fan of him unmasking at first, but watching that character evolve over those next couple of years without the mask on, was really was good, because the Undertaker was doing his thing, and then Kane started doing his thing, post X-Pac and all that.
Yeah.
And 2010s, there was just so much going on in the 2010s, because you had John Cena rising to the main event level. JBL was taking a step down. Edge was right up there too. Like, he became, I don't think he became the rated R superstar just yet, but he was close to that.
Yeah. I would say my favorite came later on in 2010s, almost in the tail end of it, and that's Bray Wyatt. I absolutely love Bray Wyatt. The Sunday wrestling show that I do is dedicated to him. I have hurt and heel from the Fiend's gloves on my knuckles, as my own tribute. But the level of character work Bray had was just outstanding, and he never said anything that was not meaningful, even if it didn't seem like it at that time. And uh, everything from the Wyatt family to the Deleter of Worlds, all the way up to the Fiend, I loved it, right? And when he got released, it crushed me. And
yeah, me too.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, Bray was my dude. Bray was my dude, and I got to go to WrestleMania 40, and they had a display for him at WWE World, and I absolutely cried in front of that thing because it was just so beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But okay, so going into this era, the 2020s. I mean, I guess it is. Who is your favorite currently, or some of your favorites currently?
Honestly, really, we talked about Roman. He definitely is. Ever since the Shield, I always liked Roman.
Yeah.
I really did. I always liked his look, and he just looked like he could actually punch somebody in the mouth. And he looked like a professional wrestler, and something just drew me to him. I don't know what, when he first came out with the Shield and they were feuding with CM Punk and all that. Roman, definitely, he's probably one of the top. And also, I got to say Cody. I got to go with Cody too, and not just from everything that's happened with this title run and him coming back and fulfilling the destiny and all that, but the fact that he got released, went and made AEW, left AEW, left a house he literally built, like literally helped shape, mold, build, and went back to WWE, knowing that he probably could get ridiculed, buried, whatever, because of the AEW thing. But honestly, they welcomed him with like open arms, and pretty much was like, we have a 2-year title run that you're about to embark on, and to watch that transition. And I always have been a Cody Rhodes fan, since he was tagging with Ted DiBiase, doing that legacy stuff, even with the stupid mask on, the clear plastic thing. I've always been a Cody Rhodes fan, but to watch him go from building AEW to leaving to going back to WWE, swallowing, I don't know how much pride he had to swallow for that, or what mental state he had to get in to do that. Big props to him, because I think his career was better for it. And, them two right there, I think really helped keeps the 2020s going. The bloodline thing really kept it going. And then Cody's story, that 2-year story that they told with him winning the belt finally from Roman, really, like, it kept me glued into wrestling again.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that some of the biggest storylines have involved Cody within the past, I don't know, since he returned. And Cody is up there for me. I think he's one of my favorites. like you said, I've been a fan of his since God, since
Like
Legacy.
Dashing Cody Rhodes, man. Yeah.
Dashing Cody Rhodes, undashing Cody Rhodes, loved it. I, to a degree, enjoyed Stardust until it became like
Yeah.
overtly just terrible. And I think what I admire most is that when he did get released or asked for his release, he went out on the independents and he made a name for himself. And
Yeah, because
he
he did a
created.
couple shows in North Carolina that I got to go to, and it was awesome to see him on the indie scene. Like, it was crazy that he actually was like, "Hey, I'm taking indie bookings."
Yeah. Yeah, there's another person that reminds me of him, and that's Matt Cardona, right? Matt Cardona's absolutely owned
Yeah.
it. And that man, if he never stepped foot back in a WWE ring or never stepped foot in a WWE ring as Matt Cardona, I would dare say he is the biggest independent name for a long time.
Yeah,
Like,
ever since he got released, pretty much, because he pretty much was like, "I don't need WWE," and he went on the indies and he did it, like with his merch sales and his meet and greets and all that. Like, he's done it. Now he's like doing TNA and stuff, and
that's insane. And then I would say my second favorite, and this might be a little bit controversial, is Seth Rollins. And I like Seth Rollins so much because when I looked at the Shield, I said Seth is that guy, right? Like, obviously we've seen Roman was the guy. He ended, but for me, I looked at it, I said Seth is the guy because he had it all. He didn't necessarily have the look as a professional wrestler, but he took and evolved his character to a point where we are now. And I dare say, without Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns wouldn't be as big as he was.
no, you're right. He wouldn't. If they had kept the Shield going and Seth hadn't turned on them, probably wouldn't have gotten as big as a pop as it is now. And everyone goes back to that moment where Seth hits him with the chair, and everyone remembers that. And I'm a really huge Seth Rollins fan. I always have been as well. And I always thought all three members of the Shield, were always going to do big things as well. But Seth Rollins, like you said, he evolves, and he just keeps evolving. His character just every year we get like a different version of Seth Rollins. The Messiah, that was different. And now we got the guy with all the crazy outfits. And it's just the way he's evolved. He's kept everyone interested in his character.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really enjoy Seth Rollins' work. Whether he's a heel or a face, I really enjoy it. Especially like, and I will say that like, I don't think I've ever watched a match where I'm like, I'm begging that both men are safe is with Seth and Cody and Hell in a Cell when Cody tore his back.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that was, and that match is something that I study because I study it for facials. If that makes sense. You study selling, you study facials when you're watching film. And that match definitely, because even when Cody tore his pec or whatever in that match, you could just see it, but he kept going. Yeah. He kept, and I mean, I've never torn a pec, so I don't know exactly how painful it is, but it can't feel too good when you got to wrestle another 15 minutes.
No, look. And we've seen some guys tear their pec, like Triple H tore his pec, and he posted pictures of it, and he didn't step back in the ring afterwards. And so when Cody tore his, he had the option to like not wrestle. Like Triple H was like, you don't have anything to prove, and he was like, I do. And he went out there and rocked that match, right? And like, I think for me, what really did it, I was like, oh, he tore his pec, whatever. They're probably gonna have a squash match where Seth just beats him.
No, they had like 15-minute banger.
The 15-minute banger, dude. And when he took that jacket off and it was just one.
Oh, and he's all, yeah.
Oh my God, no, dude. You're gonna let him wrestle with that? But he went out and he did his thing, man, and it absolutely it blew me away. I will say one of the most shocking moments that I've ever seen involves Cody, and that's the John Cena heel turn. Did you see it coming?
No, I didn't. And I'm pretty sure I was at JPWA when that happened. I was up in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So I think I wish I knew exactly when that happened, because I'm pretty sure I didn't watch it until after it had already happened, because either I was at training that night. I think we were at training that night with Dr. Tom, and I think we caught it afterwards. And had no idea. And I'm trying to not be on Facebook because I can see my notifications already spoiling Raw for me. And you know, to see Cena finally turn heel. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to work.
Yeah.
Like I really thought that people were going to cheer for some reason, because I thought, you know, people were actually getting to a point, because Cody was starting to get a little mixed reaction there. He kind of was. And so I was actually thinking of him turning heel right there. That's what I was thinking. And then it was.
Yeah. So Netflix just released a special called Unreal. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it yet, and I know I think it got released like Tuesday or something. I was told to give it a watch.
I binge watched the whole thing. And as a fan who, you know, has watched this for decades, I finally understand, right? Like, and as a fan who has criticized, you know, creative and stuff like that, I finally understand, right? Like, there's so much going on. You know, one of the things I liked about it is that you get to see the backstage, not just like in Gorilla and like and in creative, but you get to see like the human side of the wrestlers, you know, and like Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Seth Rollins, all of them. You get to see something that the cameras don't show you on Raw and SmackDown,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And so like I grew a greater respect for like Charlotte Flair because of it, and everything like that. But it's really cool to see like the creative process in some of these things. And like they talked about John Cena's heel turn. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but they talked about it, and how they came up with it is going to just blow your mind. Like
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
definitely need to watch it. I was going to start watching it at some point today, I think.
oh yeah.
Because in one of my training chats that I'm in, they're like, dude, you guys got to watch this. Like, yeah, I mean, a lot of people are really controversial over this series because it pretty much exposes everything, you know, and it pretty much cuts the kayfabe of everything. Like it brings everything to the surface, apparently. And, you know, for me, I already know the backstages of the biz. And honestly, if you have YouTube and social media, it's not really hard to figure out anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I have people that I kind of go back and forth with on TikTok and the wrestling community, and they're like, "Oh, it's killing, you know, WWE, or it's killing kayfabe," and I'm like, "But you, as a fan, actively talk about what these wrestlers are doing on their off time. You are contributing to it. So how can you complain that it's killing kayfabe? And on top of that, kayfabe's been dead since the '90s. Let's be real.
since the internet came about, like honestly, like fully came about, like, because I remember as a kid, you know, and I'm sure you do too, Sean, growing up without the internet, and you had no idea all these spoilers. Like we had no idea what was happening at the next pay-per-view. But nowadays, you could, if you search hard enough, you could probably find something. Hey, they're finally putting the belt on Cody at WrestleMania. You know,
Yes.
we didn't know Austin was going to get the belt really, you know, until, I mean, obviously when Mike Tyson got thrown in the picture, we definitely didn't know,
Yeah.
you know, because we thought it was going to be a screw job. But then Austin wins the belt, you know. But I'm sure back then, if there was the internet, it would have been spoiled weeks ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Johnny, we are going to shut down shop. We've talked about a lot here. But before we do, I always like to ask my guests this one question. What are 3 things you're grateful for today?
3 things I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for my family.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for my friends and those that I hold close to me. It's a small knit group, but you know, I hold them close, and I would do anything for them. And I'm thankful for wrestling, honestly, and I'll always be thankful for that, because you know, like I said, if I ever get into a spot mentally where I'm on that edge, I just pop in a wrestling tape, pop on Netflix, maybe even watch one of my old matches or something like that, and it kind of just takes me away. So friends, family, and wrestling, 3 things I'm always grateful for every day.
Friends, family, and wrestling. Absolutely. It sounds great. Well, Johnny, I want to take a moment and say thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for sharing your experience in the military, as well as some of the mental health challenges you went through, and then like your experience as a wrestler. I think it's important to see things come full circle. And so I want to take a moment and say I am grateful for you, and thank you for spending this time with me.
I appreciate you letting me come on and tell my story, and it's awesome to talk about mental health as well.
Yeah.
And you know, that's something that, you know, I always will tell people is mental health is always something just as important as a physical health well-being. So talk about it. And for me, it makes things easier, and hopefully this can inspire somebody to open up to somebody, and maybe we'll save a life or two or get somebody's head out of the gutter or something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all Johnny's links are going to be in the show notes. And so I want to take a moment and thank everybody for hanging out with us. Thank you for being here with us and listening to just two vets talking and sharing their experience. So I'm grateful for you guys. Be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself, and love yourself. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are worth it. Have a nice day.